from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the program. It's our Wednesday night edition of the program. The phone number, if you want to join the conversation, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And a couple of things I want to get into tonight. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene has reintroduced her articles of impeachment against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Let's see how they fare this time around. Then we've got Elon Musk. He was in a forum with the New York Times and others, and he said that the advertisers are trying to blackmail him, so they might as well go blank themselves. We'll get into that a little bit later. And Henry Kissinger has died. Now, I know some of you listening are going, who's Henry Kissinger? And the rest of you are going, get out. How old is he now? Yeah, he's 100 years old, Henry Kissinger, former Secretary of State. Henry Kissinger was the last surviving member of President Nixon's cabinet, and he died at 100 years old. The German-born statesman and scholar and U.S. military veteran died at his home in Connecticut, according to a statement from his geopolitical consulting firm, Kissinger Associates. No cause of death was given, and Kissinger was the only presidential appointee to serve contemporaneously as National Security Advisor and Secretary of State. And he also won a Nobel Peace Prize for everything that he did in Vietnam, according to this article here in the New York Post. But we have a clip of Mr. Kissinger, and I want you to hear it.
Great progress has been made, even in the talks. The only thing that is lacking is one decision in Hanoi to settle the remaining issues in terms that 2 weeks previously they had already agreed to. So we are not talking of an issue of principle that is totally unacceptable. We will not be blackmailed into an agreement. We will not be stampeded into an agreement. And if I may say so, we will not be charmed into an agreement until its conditions are right.
Now, while serving in Nixon's administration and with former President Gerald Ford in 1969 and 1977, he negotiated a deal with China that began a strategic alliance with China and initiated a policy of détente to engage with the Soviet Union during the height of the Cold War. He was also a Nobel Peace Prize winner in 1973 for helping to end the U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War and led peace talks that same year between Israel and Arab states that brought the Yom Kippur War to an end. So R.I.P. Henry Kissinger. Now, swinging it over to what's going on Capitol Hill, a couple of things coming out of there today. Speaker Mike Johnson today discussing the alarming nature of the facts that are piling up regarding President Biden's impeachment inquiry. Listen to this.
These are serious times, and this is a very serious matter. And I've said many times over the last few years, because impeachment has been an issue that we've all become all too familiar with, that next to the declaration of war, you can make an argument that impeachment may be the heaviest power that Congress holds. That constitutional responsibility lies with the House. We have a duty to pursue the facts where they lead. John Adams famously said, facts are stubborn things, and you heard a recitation of that here this morning. These facts are alarming. They're alarming to the American people. They're alarming to us. And so while we take no pleasure in the proceedings here, we have a responsibility to do it. We're very proud of the work of these three chairmen that you've seen here, Chairman Comer and Jordan and Smith. They've done an exceptional job in uncovering the obvious corruption. And you've heard it here summarized this morning very succinctly. President Biden and the Biden family. We owe it to the American people to continue this process, but to do it methodically and transparently.
Now, you just heard Speaker Johnson refer to Chairman Jordan. He's talking about Jim Jordan, chair of the House Judiciary Committee. And Jordan's out there saying he wants to subpoena Hunter Biden and get him in a session of testimony. But the impeachment inquiry into Biden's been going on for a couple of months. And it seems like now it's starting to catch a little bit of steam. And full speed ahead, it seems. At least it seems. While when Speaker Johnson starts saying things like this is a very important, high and holy, solemn duty that we hold, and whenever you start saying things like that, that means we're thinking of pulling the trigger, and we realize that it's a serious trigger, because that's how you do it. You play coy in the beginning, and you say, well, no, we're not impeaching anybody. No, come on, this is a very serious matter to impeach someone. We would never do that flippantly. No way, like McCarthy did. Now comes Johnson to say, well, look, after, we're looking at the facts, we're going to go where they go and blah, blah, blah. They all sing the same song. And the facts are, in my opinion, Biden should have been impeached a long time ago. But I'm excited to see that Chairman Jim Jordan is out there beating the drum saying, hey, where's Hunter? Listen to this.
I mean, this story is as old as time. You have a politician who does certain things. Those actions benefit his family financially, and then there's an effort to sweep it all under the rug. And we know this has happened. The best example is to use the Ukrainian energy company Burisma. 4 key facts. Hunter Biden gets put on the board of Burisma. Fact number 1. Fact number 2. He's not qualified to be on the board. He said so himself in an ABC interview. He said he got the job because of his last name. Fact number 3, the executives at Burisma asked Hunter Biden specifically, will you weigh in with folks in D.C. to help us deal with the pressure we are under? A few days later, Joe Biden gets on a plane, flies to Kyiv, and announces that you will not get the money that was already approved unless you fire the prosecutor who was applying the pressure. That all happens. Those key facts happen, and those facts are confirmed by some of the evidence we've uncovered already. This 1023 form, where the confidential human source told the FBI, and it was recorded in this form. Those are the key facts, and now it's important. We got a lot of those key facts when we interviewed one of Hunter Biden's business partners, Mr. Archer. It's important we talk to the others. We need to talk to Eric Schwerin. We need to talk to Rob Walker. We need to talk to Tony Bobolinsky. And we're in conversations with their lawyers, and we think those are going to happen. And we need to talk to Jim Biden, who was also in business with Hunter Biden. Those things need to happen. And then, as the chairman just said, as Chairman Comer just said, we will have Hunter Biden in a deposition. And frankly, I think in an open hearing, I think that would be great. That's what needs to happen so the American people get the facts, get the truth, and we can make a decision on how we move forward as a conference.
So the House Republicans, again, made these comments at a press conference today to remind the public that there is a actual impeachment inquiry website that they've launched through the House GOP. The website is gop.gov/Biden impeachment inquiry. That's gop.gov/Biden impeachment inquiry. And this is where they ended up today, was trying to give everybody an update on what they felt was important for the American public to know. And among them, Jim Jordan, House Speaker Mike, what's his name again? I'm forgetting his last name. Anybody? Bueller? Mike Johnson. I was always going to call him Mike Adams. Mike Johnson. And I was reading something. And Conference Chair Elise Stefanik making statements. And it's great to see. I mean, Stefanik said, the website's going to be providing the public with a one-stop shop for updates for each of our committees and the evidence they are uncovering. So Congress is taking it seriously. They're trying to gain public support. I think that's exactly how you do it. I'm excited to see how this unfolds. And I'm really excited because, as much as of a political junkie and observer, that I've been over the years, I love to try and figure these things out. But this one, I don't have a clue. I don't understand where this goes. I can't predict. I don't know if Biden gets an impeachment inquiry and then the Democrats say, okay. All right, listen, Joe, you got to step aside. You got to step aside so we can put somebody else in so we could try to win 24. or if there's already a deal that's made somewhere where they go, all right, that's it. We're going to lose this one. Joe, you run. You're going to fail miserably. Trump's coming back, and we just have to mitigate the fallout here and figure out what we're going to do if Trump, in fact, wins in 24 because Biden is a disaster. Or maybe a choice C. I don't know. It's hard to kind of war game this, but we're going to get into that and a little bit more. We're going to talk about Trump's debate strategy. I also want to talk about something that we've talked about before on this program, something that the World Economic Forum brings up, guys like Klaus Schwab and his little evil henchman, the professor, Dr. Yuval Harari, and it's transhumanism. And we're going to get with the guy who wrote the book on it. So don't go anywhere. Keep it locked right here. I'm with you straight till 1 a.m. tonight. We've got a lot to cover tonight, so try not to miss any part of the program. The phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And there's an interesting story. I saw it in the New York Times. It's also in the Asia Times about a artificial intelligence firm, G42, that's caught the eye of the CIA, and it has some ties to China. And this mysterious Chinese IT expert is helping to bring the funds and technology and business connections to Abu Dhabi to really make this thing happen. And I want to get into this a little bit with the author of Dark Aeon. Did I say it right? Dark Aeon. Transhumanism and the War Against Humanity. Joe Allen is with us. Joe Allen, welcome to the program.
Rich, very good to be here. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. I'm looking forward to talking about the book, and I also want to get your take on this AI and how it's a threat to our national security. Let's help us understand how this whole thing is unfolding. I know you're following this story better than most of us are.
Well, actually, this particular story has not come across my table. The story that we've been following on the War Room has been focused on the AI summit that was just held in Washington, D.C. The last 3 days, or
right.
For the last day. And yes, so kind of an awkward start. Sorry, sir. But what we're looking at ultimately is an arms race between the U.S. And China, the U.S. and Russia, an arms race between corporations within the U.S. to build the peak of aspiration, artificial general intelligence.
Right.
The goal ultimately is to kind of create a god in silico. That has been the major focus of my work for the last 3 years, looking at this sort of religious aspiration to create a god where most of these technologists believe none existed previously.
Well, how do we land on this, right? Because, I mean, as we're looking at the whole idea of artificial intelligence, and whether it's this particular company that I'm talking about or many others that you're talking about in the summit, either way, artificial intelligence has really grown. And we've heard the likes of Yuval Harari and Klaus Schwab and others that are part of the World Economic Forum talk about how, God is a, you won't need God. You'll need this technology. And some people take exception to that based on religious principle, but others subscribe to it because they're like, yeah, who needs that, good friend, that imaginary friend in the sky? What we need is the concrete data that goes into these supercomputers and this, artificial intelligence. So I'm wondering, how did we get to this point where this has become something that isn't laughed out of a conference or laughed out of a conversation when it's brought up?
Well, the aspiration has been there for a long time. The concept of artificial intelligence, even superhuman artificial intelligence, goes back to at the least World War II. And in the aftermath of World War II, you had the focus in the Department of Defense in the U.S. on the creation of a machine that could think. Now, of course, this has been kind of scoffed at for really up until the last 2 or 3 years. And suddenly with the release of GPT, the conversation has shifted dramatically, mainly because of the sudden increase in capability seen in the GPT system and other, cognate systems like the one at Google. You'll probably recall there was a whistleblower, Blake Lemoine, who just last year came forward saying that the systems that they're working on at Google are conscious, that Lambda, as it's called, Lambda is actually a conscious entity that wants to be free, that wants to help humanity. Now, this conversation is still considered fringe to many people. Skeptics abound. I myself am skeptical of the claims that anything like a godlike system will be created. But one thing is for absolute certain, the people who said you would never have a language model that would be able to string together a coherent sentence, the people who said you would never have an image generator that could create something that was, if not original, novel, and of course, the people who said you would never have an AI that could pilot a drone by itself, all of those people have been proved wrong in the last 5 to 7 years. These systems exist now. They are improving. And so the conversation is not landed for the most part on this concept of a sort of godlike intelligence, at least not among most people, but the concept of a system that would be able to outperform human beings at various cognitive tasks. Well, that conversation is basically over. It's happened.
Right. And it makes me wonder, who was promoting that? Was it just skeptics in general, or was it these AI guys themselves so that they could use this stuff for whatever they wanted to? No, I don't have an X-ray machine that could see through this, that, and the other. Meanwhile, you have it and you could do it and the type of damage you could cause with it. Who knows what the rationale there was? I'm sure years ago it was kind of like, oh, that's pie in the sky science fiction thinking. But I think we've seen it all over the internet. I mean, I've seen a million images of President Trump getting locked up by the NYPD. That never happened, but we saw those images.
Right.
And I saw another AI the other day of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez saying something that she sort of said, but they dumbed it down even further than she had when she said it. And it was very funny, but it was clearly a deep fake. And we're seeing the rise of these things, and they appear to be, to most people, definitely the untrained eye, as undetectable. And here we are. So how much more advancement do we see in this world if we've already come this far? And we've got about a minute before we take a pause.
I can say this very, very briefly. The limits are simply unknown. The ambition is, again, beyond anything imaginable. And even if it stops right now, even if these systems that we have right now are the plateau and it's never going beyond, we still have a major issue to deal with.
All right, we'll leave it there. We'll come right back. Folks, we're on with Joe Allen. He is the author of Dark Aeon, the book title Transhumanism and the War Against Humanity. He's coming right back. We're going to continue our discussion. And if you're interested in giving a call, feel free. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't move a muscle.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We continue with our conversation with Joe Allen. He's the author of the book Dark Aeon, and it's full title Transhumanism and the War Against Humanity. And I want to talk about this because we've talked about it seldom on this program because it's not something I think that comes up in everyday conversation, at least not on this show, and not in the mainstream media. But it is, in fact, the thing, right? Transhumanism as a whole is an area that people are really leery about. And I'd like to get an understanding, Joe Allen, why you wrote the book, and give everybody, I guess, an overview of why you think it's important to talk about transhumanism.
Well, I've been very unsettled by the developments in technology really since I was very young, and as they have accelerated and as the encroachment on people's personal lives has increased, it's just become more and more alarming. Once the pandemic hit, once you saw the trends that had already been in motion for decades, the increase in surveillance, the increase in propaganda, the increase in the sort of digitization of people's lives so that humans have become more and more dependent on technology, and technology has come to the forefront of the value system of the country. The pandemic you could say, radicalized me, set me off. I was writing a series of articles for two different publications, Cold Type and, of course, The Federalist. Steve Bannon read some of my work at The Federalist, brought me on to the War Room, and for the last almost 3 years now, I've done nothing but cover technology, the recent breakthroughs in artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and of course, the brain-computer interface, and how that ties to the larger philosophy of transhumanism, the desire to take hold of human evolution to go beyond the human. That extends into the realms, of course, of the post-human, and the desire to create systems, artificial intelligence systems with robotic bodies that, in fact, succeed human beings, that displace us, perhaps replace us entirely. Again, as you'd mentioned earlier in the conversation, these ideas were considered very fringe, kind of late night AM radio topics. They've become now headline stories in the Daily Mail and increasingly in places like Washington Post and the New York Times. The reason being, the technologies are catching up to the dreams. And as I said before we closed, it's unclear how close these technologies will come to the dreams, but it's very clear that at this point, the presence of AI systems that can generate art or text, AI systems that can identify dissidents, AI systems that can be programmed to kill, the presence of brain-computer interfaces that function, which exist today, and of course the advent of genetic engineering techniques like CRISPR, that means that we've already entered that realm. The two questions we have to ask are, how far will these technologies go? And to the extent that they've already come this far or they go any farther, how much are we willing to accept? How much transformation is humanity willing to deal with?
Well, I mean, this is just a lot, right? It's a lot to take in. Now, Joe Allen, something that you're right in the description for the book is transhumanism is the great merger of humankind with the machine. At this stage in history, it consists of billions using smartphones, and going forward, we'll be hardwiring our brains to artificial intelligence systems. And I want you to get into that as soon as we come back from this pause, because I think it's important that we kind of really break this down. And I like the way you put that together, because I think oftentimes we hear about transhumanism and we just don't see, A, where it's at today, what it is in general, and B, what the future looks like. So, folks, we're on with Joe Allen. He's the author of Dark Aeon, Transhumanism and the War Against Humanity. We're coming right back with him and your calls, 833-482-5337.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, folks, welcome back. We're on with Joe Allen. He's the author of the book, Dark Aeon, Transhumanism and the War Against Humanity. And, Joe, you're right. Transhumanism is the great merger of humankind with medicine. At this stage in history, it consists of billions using smartphones. Going forward, we'll be hardwiring our brains to artificial intelligence systems. Tell us what you meant by that.
The overall concept of transhumanism, again, is human enhancement by way of technology. You have covered the World Economic Forum on your show, Klaus Schwab, you all know Harari. When Klaus Schwab is talking about the fourth industrial revolution, what he's talking about, the way he defines it, is the convergence of the physical, the digital, and the biological worlds, the fusion of our physical, our digital, and our biological identities. If you look at his book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution, he's talking about everything from AIs making decisions for human beings to brain implants. Now, Schwab is the head of an ideological hub, right? The World Economic Forum is simply a place that, a lot of money, or at least deals are made to exchange money, but ideas are exchanged. People are pitching the technologies they want investment in. The real engine behind this is people like Elon Musk. Elon Musk, as your listeners probably well know, is working on Neuralink. The concept of the Neuralink is this. You have AI systems that will quickly outpace human beings. The only way humans will stay relevant in that world is to link the brain in total to these AI systems. So right now, the FDA has approved the trials for Neuralink. This is, of course, going to be done on paralytics, people who need it. But Musk is very open about his ambition for this. His ambition is to create a commercial product to allow normal human beings to control computer systems with nothing but their brains. These systems already exist. They've been developed by BlackRock Neurotech. They've been developed by Synchron. But Musk's represents kind of the height of sophistication, at least as these technologies exist today. And as he puts it, and I disagree entirely with his worldview and the direction he wants humanity to go, but he is absolutely correct in this. He says, we are already cyborgs. We are already connected to our smartphones as if they were an appendage, as if they were a part of ourselves. And what we will have to do is open the bandwidth to move from using our thumbs and our eyeballs to using our brains themselves to control these systems. That is at least one part of this great merger of man with machine that's envisioned not by nutcases in their basements, but by the wealthiest men on earth.
Wow. That's a lot. Honestly, this is one of those things where, I hear it and then 2 years from now I'll go, yep, somebody told me about that. So how do you envision all of this? It's a runaway train. There's no way to stop it, or is there?
I think the only thing that will stop it will either be a solar flare or some sort of mass worldwide Luddite rebellion. I'm not counting on the first, and I'm just not seeing the stirrings of the latter. I believe that none of this is going to be universally applied across the planet to all 8.59 billion people in the future. I think that it will be varied from one place to another, one nation to the other. But I think we can count on Silicon Valley, on the U.S. Department of Defense, on Wall Street, and on their counterparts in China, India, Europe, so on and so forth, to move forward with all of this. And so the question, again, as I posed earlier, the question is, how much can we take? How much are we willing to take? What direction is each individual in each community willing to go in? We're going to have some very bizarre choices, not unlike the ones we've had for the last 3 years. It's going to get weirder.
Got it. And I agree. I think in effect, we'll see variances of this, like the same way we see a varied use of smartphones. In some places, it's a lot more prevalent than others. But I feel like eventually people catch up, right? You know, I think Europe was flooded with smartphones in the early 2000s, while in America we still had, you know, flip phones and the like.
Yeah.
And now here we are. You know, I remember meeting people that would go on vacation to Italy or France back in like 1999, and they would say, "Oh, it's crazy in Europe. Nobody looks up. Everybody's looking down with their thumbs, just typing on their phones." And I said, "Wow, that's weird. Why would you type on your phone?" Because texting wasn't even a thing in 1999 the way it is today. And here we are, where you can't look anywhere without somebody looking down with, you know, with their thumbs going buck wild. So I wonder, even though the thought is that this would be, you know, varied across the globe, eventually you give it 10 years, 20 years, everybody catches up. Do you agree?
So this is one of the major problems we face, and that's that, again, this is not a fringe movement anymore. This really is coming out of the most powerful organizations on Earth, the wealthiest men on Earth, and a lot of it is driven by status. And so in the same way that if you want a high status job at a major corporation, or if you want to be taken seriously, oftentimes just in a social situation, you're going to need to be technologically upgraded, right? You pull out a flip phone, people think you're kind of weird. You don't have a phone, people wonder what happened in your life, what went wrong. As the technologies become more and more sophisticated, as we move closer to augmented reality, virtual reality, as we move closer to actual commercially viable brain-computer interfaces, if these things do catch on, if these dreams coming out of the tech world and suffusing, again, the most prestigious organizations on Earth, if it comes to fruition, then what you're talking about is a world in which you're not able to compete at the highest level unless you have adopted these technologies. I think it's very, very important that people start to reckon with this now. Let's hope it never comes to fruition. Let's hope that the technology simply is impossible. But if it's not, and if the adoption does become widespread, like with the smartphone, then we're going to have to figure out what sorts of alternative arrangements can be made. A lot of people are already doing that. In fact, a lot of political dissidents right now already know what it's like to live on the fringe of the system. I suspect that more and more people who still identify as human 1.0 rather than human 2.0, I suspect that a lot of people are going to have to make very similar decisions to the political dissidents of today in the very near future. Do I conform or do I not? My vote is for not.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there. Joe Allen, thanks for the explanation on all of that. Folks, if you want to get a copy of Joe's book, it's called Dark Aeon, Transhumanism and the War Against Humanity. Joe Allen, let everybody know how they can get a copy of the book.
You can get it at bookshop.org, thriftbooks.com, and of course, if you are acclimated to the great beast, you can get it on Amazon. You can find all this at my website, joebot.xyz, and I do hope that the deep research there will get your listeners started down the path to really thinking this through and deciding what kind of future they want to live in.
Outstanding. Well, sir, thank you for the conversation. I appreciate it. And folks, we get to your calls and more straight ahead. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Glad to be on your show, Rich. It's just an amazing broadcast that I hope the rest of America listens to every day.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So transhumanism, it's the wave of the future. These brain chips or brain interfaces are going to rule the roost, right? We're going to be a bunch of cyborgs. Honestly, I've been hearing this stuff for years, and it's easy to say, that'll never happen, but I totally believe it's going to happen. I believe it's going to happen, and I believe that we are in pretty bad shape as a species, I'm going to say. Earlier today, I was scrolling on Instagram, and I saw somebody posted something about, and we'll probably discuss it more at the top of hour number 3. But it was about a suicide pod. And I thought this was remarkable. And not in a good way. In certain countries, you can order this pod that fills, I forget what chemical, I don't know if it was like nitrous oxide or something, that causes you to die. But it's like an airtight chamber, like almost like a coffin with a glass window, though, so you could watch your favorite thing. And it was fascinating to me how you could go to a sunset. Let's say you wanted to, your final moment to be a sunset, and you go in this little contraption, and then you hit the button, and then the gas fills the little chamber, and then you're done. It's like your own personal private gas chamber. And I thought to myself, this is crazy, right? And then what's worse is that some governments have started to subscribe to the idea of physician-assisted suicide. And it just made me think, if that's happening right now today, you bet your bottom dollar that people are going to be like, I got the new brain chip. Absolutely they are. The same way they're like everybody. I mean, now, not everybody, but the same way people are going crazy for Teslas or going crazy for whatever the coolest technology trend is, the latest iPhone, the latest Google Pixel phone, the latest whatever. People love that, the latest video game console, whatever the case is. People like to have cool stuff, something Joe Allen just mentioned. He said it's a status symbol. And there's always going to be those early adopters and people that like that stuff. But I don't think for a second that Elon Musk would invest $1 into a company like Neuralink if he didn't think that these brain chips were going to make him a ton of money. Now, you could make the argument and say, well, he invested in Twitter and he didn't think it was going to make him a lot of money. I agree. But I think he did that from an altruistic perspective because he's an altruist and he wants to, like most billionaires, they want to make the world better one way or another for themselves or for others. Look at how far Bill Gates takes it with, we're going to create vaccines for everybody. And the more vaccines we have, the better the world will be. And he tests them on kids in African villages before he gives them to anybody else. It's just the level of insanity, or I guess the departure from humanity, the departure from what I guess most of us regular people who believe in God would say is this departure from just godliness and normalcy is just crazy. And it looks like we're headed there on an express train. Plus, I want to get into this story about China and their ties to this UAE firm. That's an AI firm, and the CIA's investigating them. So we'll talk about that as well at the top of hour number 3. But straight ahead, we're going to continue our conversation on lots of things that are going on, including President Trump and his calls for the Republican National Committee to revamp debates. Will it work? We don't know, but we'll discuss it straight ahead. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. And welcome to the program, hour number 2. The phone number, if you want to join us, is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And there's a few things going on in the news that we mentioned earlier, and a few things that we're going to dig into now. President Trump has asked the GOP to revamp the debate structure, and we're going to get into that in a moment. We also have Elon Musk telling the advertisers that bailed out, saying he was an anti-Semite. He says they're trying to blackmail him and that they should go F themselves, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Plus, there's a story on AOC, our least favorite congresswoman from the Bronx and Queens, AOC all out crazy, and I'm going to get to that as well. But I want to bring in our guest to talk about this GOP revamp and whether it'll actually work, whether it won't work, and what the ramifications of it all are. And Jeff Webb's an author of the best-selling book, American Restoration, How to Unshackle the Great Middle Class, and the publisher of Human Events and the Post-Millennial. Jeff Webb, welcome back, sir.
Rich, good to talk to you again.
Likewise. So we've got this story that Trump wants. He's asked for some changes, and thus far the RNC hasn't really, in my opinion, done a great job with a lot of things. And I'm not very inspired to think they're going to do a good job at enacting any of these requests that former President Trump has. What are your thoughts? What's he calling for?
I think that, well, first of all, I think you're right that recently the RNC hasn't done very many things well at all. And I have to say that I think what Vivek said as he started out the last debate about if this was a private business, the entire group would have been fired because there's no, they haven't achieved anything, they haven't accomplished anything, and they're it's time for a different direction. Why are they there? Why are they being paid? What are they doing? They have a big budget and we're not being successful. So at some point there has to be accountability. Having said that, the debate, now he was talking that day about the elections the night before, and that we had pretty much the Republicans had lost again. And how many times does it take before you make a change? But I think that the debates are a perfect example of just bad decision making. And then I think also bad execution. What are they accomplishing? They haven't really helped anybody. Could you say Nikki Haley's been helped a little bit? Maybe. But, you have a forum where you have all these candidates criticizing each other. And all of them criticizing Donald Trump, who anybody can look at this and see he's going to be, barring some unforeseen legal situation, he is going to be the nominee. So we're giving our own candidates, our own party, a platform to criticize and damage potentially politically and jeopardize the chance for an election victory. We're giving him a platform to do that. And we're paying for it. We're spending money, like Trump is saying. Why don't we save this money and spend it on the general election? So I also agree with what Vivek said about, who we're choosing to actually interview the candidates on these debates. And of course he was talking about NBC, but I thought the Fox hosts were terrible too. I mean, Stuart Varney, pretty good. Dana Perino with the, hey, you're off the island comment right at the beginning was laughable. And I just don't see that anything is being accomplished with these debates. So we need to either change the format or, maybe just completely do away with them. It worked out pretty well when we had the people in Iowa and New Hampshire, who are really versed at, vetting candidates in a retail political sort of situation, kind of, spending months and coming up with the top candidates and getting the nomination process going. But I just don't see what the debates are accomplishing at all.
What are some of the requests that President Trump has, Jeff Webb?
Look, I haven't really dug into all the requests that he's making, but I think at one point he just said, "Why are we doing this? And why do we not take the money and spend it in the general election?" And I think he's just really talking about, is there anything that can be done? I don't think he believes in what they're doing at all. But these debates have gotten to be kind of part of the election process somehow. And let's be fair here. The last time around, 2016, Trump was the big beneficiary of that debate format, right? He's the one that stood out with everybody on the stage. He was so different, he really benefited from it. Having the kind of lead he has right now, I think strategically, he's probably making the right decision by not even participating. But if this was, if there was a real horse race here and 2 or 3 candidates that were really close, maybe it could work. But having that many candidates on the stage at one time when everybody's got to hurry and they've got to talk so fast and try to get all their points that, the delivery is not even good. And then they're talking over each other and they're insulting each other. It's, I don't know. I don't think it accomplishes anything. I think it makes us look bad.
Folks, we're on with Jeff Webb, and he's written the book, American Restoration, How to Unshackle the Great Middle Class, and he's the publisher of Human Events and the Post-Millennial. Jeff Webb, I want you to stick with us. I want to continue to not only discuss this topic, but the rest of your opinions on the news of the day. And folks, if you're just tuning in, the phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. It's Rich Valdez with our guest, Jeff Webb. He is the author of the book. Where'd it go? There it goes. American Restoration, How to Unshackle the Great Middle Class. He's also the publisher of Human Events and the Post-Millennial. And as a publisher, Jeff Webb, I'd like to get your opinion on another, maybe not a publisher, but platform owner, Elon Musk, who was at the New York Times Deal Book Summit, and he had some pretty harsh words for advertisers that were, he says, trying to blackmail him into censoring content. Listen to this.
There's a public perception that that was part of a apology tour, if you will. That this had been said online. There was all of the criticism. There was advertisers leaving. We talked to Bob Iger today.
I hope they stop.
You hope?
Don't advertise.
You don't want them to advertise?
No.
What do you mean?
If somebody's going to try to blackmail me with advertising, blackmail me with money, go yourself.
But
go yourself. Is that clear? I hope it is. Hey, Bob, if you're in the audience.
Well, let me ask you then.
That's how I feel.
Well, there you go. Elon Musk says he tells everybody how he feels. Jeff Webb, what's your thought on his comments and the situation overall?
Yeah, Musk is saying, "Read my lips," right?
Yeah, right.
When you have that kind of money, you can, I guess you can say whatever you want to say. It seems like, but look, I think to some extent he's right. I mean, again, you've got these it's pretty well known. These advertising agencies are run by, woke corporate executives, the same with some of the bigger companies, and they're looking for an excuse to take somebody like Musk down. And they think he's a little bit too conservative. So they're looking for any excuse that they can. They'll twist anything around. It's all part of the cancel culture we live in, right? So I hope he stands his ground, and I understand the principle that he's basing his remarks on.
And I get that too. And as a publisher yourself, I know you're not in that position. Most aren't, right? Very few people are the richest man in the world to have what they call FU money, right? Yeah. So it's not a good business practice. I agree with that. But I think on principle, which is I think why he even bought Twitter, it was on principle. I don't think it was really an investment per se. When you look at this, I feel like, and you just alluded to this, that it's another example of our cancel culture, which I think it is. How does somebody like you, the post-millennial, Human Events, any smaller blog publisher, how do they survive in a climate where everybody's out to get you, even in a case like this where Media Matters will go ahead and kind of fabricate the images that they said were anti-Semitic with the advertising?
Right. No, exactly. Well, we try to do the right thing. And that's where we start, and we try not to be intimidated. We don't want to be stupid, and do we like advertising? Yeah, we have to have revenue to be able to have a platform to take the positions we take, right? But you just have to be careful. But you can't be in this business really and just allow yourself to be intimidated. And you've got to, people are out there trying to get you and cancel you, and they're trying to go to making you look bad, filing lawsuits. I mean, there's all kinds of things where there's that kind of leftist intimidation all the time. So you just have to be vigilant. You have to be careful how you say things. You've got to, you've got to be aware of what you're saying. You've got to be able to back it up, but you can't be intimidated, because once you are, and if you get compromised, what do you have, and where does that lead, and what are you saying to the people that work for the company, and what are you saying to the people who follow us, who trust us? So it's not easy. It's not easy being a conservative platform right now. That's for sure. You don't see any of these platforms with any of the major consumer products companies advertising, right? That they're not doing it. We're all kind of blacklisted. So you're not going to see Coca-Cola or Delta Airlines or Procter & Gamble advertising on conservative platforms. You just don't see it.
Jeff Webb, you're I think you're spot on. And there's so many people that are, maybe not exactly your shoes, but they're in your shoes. They're small business owners. They're trying to get forward in America, even those that are working at small businesses. And your book, American Restoration, How to Unshackle the Great Middle Class, I think is such an important work, because that's truly where we are, right? I think the middle class has always been the kind of that fertile place to grow, where you can be upper middle class and have more of that mobility that everybody's looking for as part of the American dream. And it seems to be diminishing, in particular now at present time, where while the jobs reports say there's more and more jobs, many of them part-time jobs, I don't think you're really pursuing the American dream if you're not making it the way you'd like to make it, right? Everybody wants to own a home, go on a couple of good vacations a year, not have to work a second job just to afford the home you have and your groceries. And it seems like we're there. Tell us a little bit about the unshackling of the middle class.
Well, I wrote this book. I have a business background. I just built a business from scratch over about 40 years, and then kind of dabbled in politics, and then I sold the company. Wanted to get further in. That's how I ended up with Human Events and the post-millennial. But I have very much a middle class background. Grew up in Dallas, Texas, and went to public schools and went to a public university, University of Oklahoma, and was able to cobble a little money together with an idea when I was 24 years old, and was fortunate enough to build it into a significant company and have some financial success. So I really did live what most people consider the American dream.
Mm-hmm.
But, when I really started trying to decide politically what was going to be important to me and what were the causes that I felt strongest about, I kind of went back to that middle class upbringing and started really researching what has happened to the middle class. Because when I was growing up, my father was in the oil business. He wasn't a big oil tycoon. He worked for an oil company. It was just a regular kind of salary office job. And my mother, taught kindergarten, and we were in middle class. But we were doing fine, and we were moving up the ladder, and life was getting better. And now you look at gradually what's happened to the middle class. I mean, the size and affluence of the middle class in America is what built the greatest economy in the world, especially following World War II, when the GIs came home and went to work and started families, and again built this incredible economy. But over the last 30 years, things have just started to trickle down. It's gotten a little harder and a little harder. And as you're saying, now it takes both heads of households, to be working, to have the kind of things that when I was growing up, we had with really one person working. And, you look at the millennials now and how hard it is for them to afford a home. And it's just, the middle class is being squeezed. At the top is doing just fine. It's like the housing market right now. Houses are being sold, but most of them are on cash. The only people that have cash are the people that are more
that have
affluent.
cash.
And people trying
Right.
to make a mortgage payment. The people
Or banks.
trying to make a mortgage. Yeah. So when you figure the average mortgage payment is nearly double what it was a little over a year ago right now, I mean, it's the people are kidding themselves. Even Jamie Dimon said today, if you saw this, when he's saying that we're on a sugar high with our economy. That we look at some of the numbers and we talk about low unemployment and this and that, but he said at the bottom part of the food chain, unfortunately, things are getting harder. And it's not good. And that segment of our society has not really improved in the last 40 years. We've done all these different kinds of programs. We've done everything we can, all this government involvement, and it hasn't moved the needle. And so, we're spending all this money. We're spending all this money on foreign wars with no, with no strategic outcome defined. And we've run up a $33 trillion debt that somebody's going to have to pay off. And we're just, we're on that sugar high. We're just marching along, and we're not doing what it takes to maintain and expand the affluence of the middle class.
Jeff Webb, wise words indeed. Thank you for joining us tonight. I appreciate it. Folks, check out Jeff Webb's book, American Restoration, How to Unshackle the Great Middle Class. Jeff, thanks for being with us. And folks, straight ahead, we're going to talk about managing your reputation. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So we were just talking about Elon Musk, and earlier we were talking about Donald Trump. And both of these guys, they say what's on their mind, and there's an onslaught of attacks on them in the media. And one thinks, a lot of people are afraid to take a stance on things because for fear of their reputation and where that might end up if, people, even Kanye West a while back, and he's under attack again for a song he wrote, which seems, from the headline to be in bad taste, but seems like he doesn't care. And I think oftentimes it's that uncaring attitude that gets you the fodder, right? And they take shots at you. But ultimately, there's a reputation to maintain. And even Sam Altman, right? I think it was his reputation that kind of saved them here. He was ousted as the CEO of OpenAI, but then he came back, and some were revolting and others were not. And I want to talk about reputations because I think it's important, right? I think it's a big part of you and I and the regular normal people of our daily lives. Or if you're like me in a public-facing type of career, there's always an element of reputation management or reputation protection that you have to maintain because of the nature of your job. But a lot of us don't oftentimes speak about those things. So I want to speak with the author of Reputation Shift. Mike Mooney is a speaker, a coach, and the author of the aforementioned book. Mike Mooney, welcome.
Rich, thanks so much. Good evening.
Good evening to you, sir. My pleasure. And I want to get your thoughts on this Sam Altman being rehired at OpenAI and how it really inspired loyalty for some and caused a revolt amongst others.
Yeah, I'll tell you. And again, thanks for having me on, Rich. It's been a really interesting story as it's been unfolding over the last week or so, and there's still more to come, without a doubt. I think every day we're finding out some new things that are happening at the board level. But if we drill into your particular question on reputation, my goodness, I mean, what a litmus test, right, for leaders. If looking at a leader being ousted by the board and more than 90% of the employees raising their hands saying, if he goes, I go. Right?
Right.
And I think, now there may be a variety of reasons for that, and instilled in there. But from what I've been reading and observing over the last week about Sam and how he's built that loyalty, built that reputation, a lot of it comes down to the way that he interacted with his team. The people were true believers in the mission. He was able to really rally people around this idea of going to a new horizon, taking them, redefining an industry. And people were really just very much, rallying around that with him and recognizing that this is someone that they see as one of them, and he's very, very charismatic from what we've been reading and seeing, and very curious, which meant that he's open to people's ideas and thinking about, hey, how can we build this together? What are we doing here? And for leaders, I mean, that's the kind of reputation you want to be building, that you're curious, you want input, you want to be with your people, which espouses their loyalty.
When it comes to reputation, what do you advise, regular people who aren't Altman, who aren't Musk, who aren't Trump, who aren't Kanye West, on protecting their reputation? What are the elements that you recommend?
Yeah, it's a great question, and that really was the catalyst for my book. Quite honestly, in my career, I'd done a lot of work in crisis management. I did that for athletes and such. And the reality is that it's not just the celebrities or, like you said, the executives or the people in the spotlight. It's you and I, right, that need to be managing and building reputation. So my key advice on this is to be proactive. Be proactive. Too often and too many times, people wait for the what now. Oh gosh, what do I do now? My reputation's been tarnished. It's in jeopardy. So there are a couple of things that I would always tell people to or encourage them to be thinking of is A, be proactive. Come from a values-based perspective and place in your life, right? Which we've probably all seen people who show up in different places and you don't know what you're getting. Different meetings, different environments, social work, whatever it might be. Like, wait, this person's acting very different in each of these situations, right? So being consistent in your actions is key. Coming from a place of your values is essential, because you can never go wrong with that, because it's coming from an authentic place in you. So be proactive in what you're doing. Be mindful of your reputation every day. I mean, I often tell people that, look, I tell leaders this, that, we're earning our reputations every single day. So what did you earn today?
That's a great point. And I want to double back to when you said, be mindful about your actions and how that, goes with protecting your reputation. We're going to do that straight ahead. Folks, I want to invite you to call 833-482-5337, either on this topic or get in queue for Open Phone America, which is coming up at the top of the hour. Again, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't move a muscle. We're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. Amigos, we're on right now, and we're having a discussion with Mike Mooney. He's a speaker, coach, and author of the book Reputation Shift. And my question to him was, he mentioned one of his tips for protecting your reputation was to be mindful of your actions as a way of protecting your reputation. Mike Mooney, unpack that for us.
Yeah, absolutely, Rich. You know, one of the ideas and strategies that I often share is this idea. And going back to sports, you like sports, don't you? Some sports.
UFC is like my thing.
What is it? Sorry.
UFC.
Okay. Well, then, all right. Well, then maybe we can use this as an example, then, right? I mean, you know, in UFC, there's oftentimes you think you see something, right? You see it the one way, but then they show you like the instant replay, right? And the instant replay is awesome because it shows you something from a different perspective. You get an opportunity to slow things down, right? You get an opportunity to look at it through maybe a different lens and go, oh gosh, you know, I thought he caught him with that foot, but actually it was the elbow, right? I mean, but it just gives you a different way of looking at things and stops you from jumping immediately into a decision or a reaction. So if we could, with certain things that we're going to be doing, decisions, maybe it's a phone call, maybe it's hitting send on an email, right? Maybe it's confronting someone. I always encourage people to just kind of visualize the instant replay. What would this look like from another perspective, whether it's that person, the employer, or the family member, whoever it might be. And oftentimes we're going to, in that moment, be able to say, you know what, maybe I need to reframe the way I'm going to say this. Maybe I'm going to sleep on this. Maybe, you know, I'm going to handle this a different way, because we tend to be very reactionary, especially when emotions come into play. And more often than not, our reputations can get damaged and hurt when we're in emotional states. So this is really a way for us to slow down for a moment and really think about it and step out of ourselves and see if we could handle it in a more proactive and a better way.
Well, that's good advice, Mike Mooney. And in addition to being mindful of your actions, which I think not only helps to protect your reputation, but probably helps to preserve relationships, to increase and improve communications with business people and interpersonal relationships. What else do you recommend in your book, Reputation Shift?
Yeah, so a lot of my career, Rich, most of it was spent in motorsports, in NASCAR, IndyCar, and Formula One, and working in a lot of different capacities there. And one of the most vital roles on the race team, a lot of people think it's the driver or the pit crew, right? Those are really the stars of the show. But the reality is that one of the most vital roles on the race team is this person called the spotter. Right now, the spotter is this person who stands like high atop the racetrack property, right? They have a full field of vision of the racetrack. They have binoculars and radio communication to that driver. And they're the ones that when that driver is solely focused on their goal of protecting position, gaining position, right? It's that spotter who's telling them what's happening in their blind spots, in the places they can't see. But if they were to get up into, Rich, it's going to take them and probably other people out of the race, right? The collateral damage. in that. So I'm very mindful. I mean, look, we're humans, right? And being humans often means that our humanness, we can create a human mess with things, right? And we all have blind spots if we want to be honest with ourselves. And my advice is for people to reach out to someone they trust, someone who they know and trust has their best interests at heart, and ask them, hey, would you be my spotter? You know, if you see that I'm acting in a place that's in my blind spots, would you take me aside and let me know? Would you tell me what I'm not seeing, right? And tell me what I need to hear, not what I want to hear. Too often as leaders, you know, we surround ourselves with people who would tell us what we want to hear, not necessarily what we need to hear. So, you know, I think it's very important that we have these spotters in our lives that are willing to step in and say, hey, Rich, I'm seeing this right now, and I just got to let you know what's going on here and what could possibly happen, you know, and that'll help slow us down as well.
Excellent advice, Mike Mooney. Folks, we're going to continue our discussion with Mike Mooney, the author of Reputation Shift, and your calls and Open Phone America coming up straight ahead at the top of the hour. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So after a 25-year career in motorsports, Mike Mooney wrote Reputation Shift, Lessons from Pit Road to the Boardroom, with one goal: to create an actionable field guide for people who want to win in the reputation economy. And he leads these shift speed shops that I think are really interesting. It's a unique spin on you know, doing better. And I'd like him to tell us more about it. Mike Mooney, welcome back.
Hey, thanks so much. Thanks so much, Rich. Great to be with you this evening. Thank you.
Tell us about these shift speed shops.
Yeah, so this was something that actually came out of our time in COVID, right? Our seclusion period here, you know,
Right.
and there's a saying in racing that sometimes you have to slow down in order to speed up, right? And it seems counterintuitive, but it's really about the driver taking the time to really hit their marks and know, you know, how the car is handling, where is it performing best, things like that. And I really believe that we've all been designed to be high performance vehicles in this world, that we all are actually, you know, people that are in a race, not necessarily racing against each other, but really it's about ourselves. How are we getting better each day? So when I was, you know, working through the book and had that out, I have a buddy of mine who owns a winery out in California, and he said, you know, I've got a racing line of wine, and one of them is called Shift. And he's like, we ought to do something with that. I'm like, that's a great idea. So, you know, we created these virtual events where we bring leaders together, and we would have the winemaker on talking about the amazing red, and it gave us an opportunity to talk about, you know, topics like trust. How do we build trust as leaders, right? You know, how are we showing up with authenticity? The idea in all of this, Rich, is really to help people unlock their potential, to drive greater opportunity, and create traction in their lives. It's that simple, right? But it really takes us being intentional and slowing down, and that's what these moments, these experiences are all about.
Well, for everybody listening that wants to, you know, get to that next level in their life or their career, what are some of the topics or, I guess, tips that you give in these workshops?
Sure. So, beyond the conversations around reputation, which I believe are vitally important in this hyper-connected world of ours these days. And thank you for shedding a light on that as well, Rich. It's an important conversation for all of us. But I also I speak on continuous improvement, the idea of, how do we find that 1% of daily improvement each day? The idea of mindset as well being such a vital, critical role for us and how we show up each day. And mindset isn't about, hey, the rosy glasses and the glass is always half full. It's really about how do we meet the challenges of life in a way that's healthy for us and healthy for the people around us, whether it's our family, friends, or employees or team members, and then I'm also speaking on the topic of peak performance as well.
Well, before you get to peak performance, how do you go about that the step that you just mentioned for people that want to do everything that you just mentioned? What are some of the actionable items that would go along with that?
For the 1% of daily improvement,
for that focusing on continual improvement. Because I know for some careers, in mine, I have to listen to my radio shows. I listen to them. I try to get better. But not everybody has a job where you're reviewing everything you just did or said and making sure that you improve on it. So for those who don't have that part of life for them, what are some of the steps you'd recommend?
Well, first, I would encourage you to find that part of your life.
Right.
To be honest, we should be striving, to find ways to improve. Because otherwise, what are we doing? We're floating along, right? We've been given a precious gift with a life, right? We get one run at it. So, I would encourage people, find that area. Where is that one area of life that you would like to see an improvement in, and then from there think about, okay, so what is that 1%, area of work that I could do? And listen, it could be building a better relationship. So what does that mean? Okay, well, so if I want to build better relationships, and this is something that I recommend to people, and I do this myself. I'm a practitioner, Rich. I'm not just about the theory. Is every Friday I carve out from 12 o'clock to 3:30, if not 4 o'clock, and I'll make 5 phone calls to people in my network, people I haven't spoken to in 6 months or longer. And it's a way to reach out and reconnect with people, right? So if I want to build the relationships, I have to take action. So what's a small step I can do? Well, I'm going to carve the time out and I'm going to make some phone calls, right? That's just a simple example of what you can do of 1%. It's not a big swing. It's just doing it. And even if it's 3 phone calls a week, 3 phone calls a week for a year, that's 155, 156. It's late right now, Rich. I'm sorry, my math might be off, but it's over 150 reconnects that you're going to have in a year. Think about the impact that'll have in relationships in your life.
Staying plugged
opportunities. Yeah, absolutely. So it's the small steps that we're talking about, but it's looking at the long game. Hemingway, in his book, The Sun Also Rises, has a quote in there. One of the characters goes bankrupt. And one of his buddies says, how did you go bankrupt?
Mike Mooney, I hate to cut you short, but the music's going to kick us out of here. Let everybody know how they can get a copy of your book.
You can go to MikeMooney.com.
Everybody go to MikeMooney.com and order the book. Mike Mooney, great conversation. I'm going to have you back because there's so much to discuss. I appreciate it, sir.
I appreciate you, Rich. Thank you very much. Have a great night.
You bet. Folks, we're coming right back with Open Phone America. Don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. And, of course, earlier today, and this is hour number 3 of the program, you're able to call this hour, 833-482-5337 is the number. And I mentioned that Henry Kissinger passed away. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the next segment. There's also some stories out there. An FBI agent was carjacked in broad daylight near Capitol Hill. And in New York City, there was a carjacking where it seemed like an emotionally disturbed homeless man just jumped into a car. I think it might have been left running while the guy was just putting money in the meter or something, and gets in the car. The guy comes up to the window. He's like, "Hey, what are you doing? Get out of my car." The guy goes nuts, drives like 4 feet, crashes into something, exits the vehicle, starts running around. The cops arrive. They're like, "Have a seat." He lays down in front of a city bus. And then they're like, "Yeah, that's the guy who did it." And he's just running around like a crazy. And the next thing you know, he is on top of a black Cadillac Escalade on the roof. And he's like jumping up and down. And the driver of the car eventually gets out. The cops are pulling out their tasers to get him off. And he slides down the front windshield as if it were a slide. And now he's on the hood, at which time the driver grabs him and punches him in the face, dazing him long enough for the cops to grab the guy and handcuff him. That's New York City. That happened today. Crazy, right? And I look at that and I think, man, crime is all over the place in so many big cities in America. And the mayor of Chicago, interestingly, he's dealing with a lot of crime. And Chicago has historically had a lot of crime, right? They've never really, at least not in modern times, as far as I know, they haven't had a Republican running the city. And not that that may change things, but I find it interesting because he blames crime and destruction and chaos on, yes, you guessed it, right-wing extremism. And I think it's so fascinating that to hear this, because he says it with a straight face. Listen to this.
You know, what we've seen is a very raggedy form instituted by right-wing extremism. Everyone knows that the right-wing extremism in this country has targeted democratically ran cities. And quite frankly, they've been very intentional about going after democratically ran cities that are led by people of color.
Now, hold on a second. Everybody knows that right-wing extremists target Democrat cities? What does he mean? That we criticize them in the media? I talk about them on the radio, or you might hear about it on conservative-leaning news networks? I mean, I've never heard of everybody knowing that right-wing extremists are targeting Democrat cities. But he goes on to explain why crime is the result of right-wing extremists, not his lack of leadership. Listen to this.
And their whole motivation is to create disruption and chaos, because that's what that particular party has been about. Right? This is the same political party that did not want to accept that President Obama was actually an American. It's the same Republican right-wing extremism that stormed the Capitol. It's the same right-wing extremism that refuses to accept the results of the Civil War. It's raggedy. It's disrespectful. It's mean-spirited. It's an unclean spirit, quite frankly.
Wow. Powerful words. My goodness, Mayor Johnson. And again, that is Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, the successor of Beetlejuice Lori Lightfoot. And I said, you know what? Let me see what is being reported right now as crime in Chicago. Because the last time I heard about right-wing extremism, right, it was those big MAGA guys that poured bleach on Jussie Smollett and then put a noose around his neck. Oh, wait. Turned out he made that whole thing up. It was 2 African brothers that were actors that he paid to beat him up, and the whole thing was a hoax. And then he got arrested for it. And then he said he was too crazy to serve time, and they let him go. But I said, let me check out what type of crime is going on in Chicago tonight to see if the perpetrators are right-wing extremists, right? Every time I see videos of this stuff, I don't usually see right-wing extremists. I don't see people with KKK hoods or neo-Nazis, or even the people that he mentioned, the people that stormed the Capitol. I don't even see a bunch of FBI guys with red MAGA hats either. But here we go. 4 stories come up in the last 24 hours. Let's see here. ABC 7 Chicago, 18 minutes ago. Chicago shooting, 4 shot in Homan Square. 8 hours ago. Baby shot in head, critical condition after Washington Park shooting. Fox 32 Chicago. 15-year-old boy arrested in Chicago armed robbery spree. Chicago Sun-Times, 24 hours ago. Chicago car crash leaves woman dead. All right, so now we're going to take them one by one. All right, here. 4 people were shot in the city's Homan Square neighborhood. A 30-year-old man shot in grave condition, 24-year-old woman, 31-year-old woman. All those are all the victims. Chicago police have not yet commented on the shooting. No details have been released. It's not clear if anyone's in custody yet. Okay, so we don't know if that was a right-wing extremist or not. Let's go on to the next one. Baby shot in head. A 9-month-old baby girl is in critical condition following a shooting. 10:55 p.m. Shot in the head in East Garfield. Chicago police say they received the call around 10 o'clock. Let's see. Circumstances around the shooting are not available at this time. Another story where we don't know if it, in fact, is a right-wing extremist. Let's go here. 15-year-old. Let's see if the 15-year-old is a right-wing extremist. 15-year-old boy has been charged with 11 armed robberies in the span of several hours. The juvenile taken into custody on Monday, but the robberies occurred over the summer. The teenager was identified as one of the offenders who participated in the robberies in Inglewood, East Garfield, all over the place. Then they give all the addresses. The 15-year-old was hit with 11 felony counts, armed with a firearm. No information was provided by the police. Oh, no information again. That must be a right-wing extremist. That's 15. Because the right-wingers are very known for armed robberies. Let's continue here. Let me get to this next story if my screen will cooperate. Okay. Car crash. Woman dead. Let's see what happened here. Let's see if this was a crazy MAGA supporter that ran her over. Woman is dead after being hit in Chicago area. Blah, blah, blah. The woman who believed was in her 40s. She was run over by another woman. Oh, wait, we don't know. Was taken to the hospital. The driver of the vehicle stayed on the scene. Major accidents are... no information on the driver. Must be a right-wing extremist. Do you see the trend, folks? We continue. Let's see. I'm going to pull up another one. 15-year-old boy. Weekend shootings. 1 fatally shot. 14 shot. Crime is up nearly 60% this year from 2019, the last time they measured this. And again, I'm supposed to believe that this is a right-wing extremist. Man shot walking his dog on South Side. South Side, an area known to house many right-wing extremists. Police say the 32-year-old victim was walking his dog, shot by 2 offenders. The shooters fled the scene on foot. No arrests have been reported. No information. Must be right-wing extremists. Now, listen, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that we've got a major problem here in Chicago. Not only are people being killed, people are being hurt. The media isn't curious. The police aren't sharing any information. It doesn't seem like they're catching a bunch of people. And now the mayor's blaming it on right-wing extremists. I don't buy this for a second. The fact that you have a city that's been plagued by crime for decades, and everybody knows it's gang-related, it's drug-related, turf wars. It's never been right-wing extremists. Right-wing extremists aren't bringing the crime into Chicago. Chicago is allowing the crime to exist because of its policies. J.B. Pritzker and his no bail policies are making crime even worse than it has been. That's why they're seeing this increase in crime. Everybody knows this. And those who don't know it, listen to this program. We'll tell you. Listen tomorrow when we have the folks from the National Police Association on. They'll tell you. The fact that this mayor can say things like, everybody knows that right-wing extremists target Democrat-run cities and are the responsible party for crime is one of the craziest things I've heard. Now, listen, if you tell me we've got attacks on Jews all over the place, well, I'd say, well, maybe you got a neo-Nazi problem, right? Maybe you have a Hamas problem. But that's not what we're talking about here. He's the mayor of Chicago. They don't have a problem with their Jewish citizens being attacked. They don't have a problem with white supremacy or right-wing extremism. They have a problem with failed leaders like him. They have a problem with leftists that refuse to face real problems in the face and handle them. And as a result, their citizens are dying. Anyway, we'll continue the discussion on Kissinger and the rest of everything that's going on tonight when we come back. Until then, the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
If you had one of your aides here pick up the phone and call Beijing and say, Dr. Kissinger would like to speak with President Xi, would he take your call?
There's a good chance that he'd take my call, yes.
What about the Russian president, Vladimir Putin?
Probably, yes.
If a president were to come to you and say, Henry, would you fly to Moscow and talk to Putin?
I would be inclined to do it, yes. But I would be an advisor, not an active person.
I wasn't thinking about reinstating you as Secretary of State for the... Of course you'd be an advisor.
Yes.
Is the late Henry Kissinger doing an interview with CBS News. And former Secretary of State Kissinger mentioned that he would be inclined, right? I believe the way he said, I would be inclined. He said he would be inclined to meet with Putin or with Xi if they had called upon him, and that he thinks that they would take his phone call. And it sparked my interest in seeing what's going on in Russia lately and in Ukraine. And if you listen to this, and by the way, Kissinger, at 100 years old, passed away. And I mentioned that earlier. I just wanted to reiterate it. And that's why we were playing that audio. But in Russia, or I should say in Russia, they're mourning the loss of a general. And how did he die? Well, this decorated Russian general was blown up on a landmine in Ukraine. And they believe the landmine was possibly planted by the Russians. Major General Vladimir Zavadsky, 45 years old, that's my age, deputy commander of the 14th Army Corps, take two, security, died Tuesday, according to a social media post for the Moscow Higher Combined Arms Command School. Zavadsky graduated from military school known as Emru Kremlin in 2000. Zavadsky was not killed in action, but rather died in a mine blast in the rear during the senseless relocation of his unit. That was reported by the Telegram channel, which claims close ties to Russian security services. The investigation is considering the possibility of an explosion on a mine, which had been previously placed by a neighboring unit for the purpose of combating the enemy's sabotage. And trying to get the enemy, they got their own guy. I'm looking at a picture of Major General Zavadsky. It looks like a young Vladimir Putin, to tell you the truth. 45 years old, poor guy. The mine that killed the general may have been placed by another Russian unit to stop Ukrainian saboteurs. Wow, what a story. Russia's defense ministry has yet to confirm the general's death. During his more than 2 decades of military service, Zavadsky commanded a motorized rifle battalion and received an award for bravery. He's survived by his wife, Oksana, and their 2 sons. And Zavadsky is the 12th Russian general to be killed since the start of the war in Ukraine in February of 2022. Isn't that something? Friendly fire, killing generals of all people, right? Oftentimes you hear friendly fire, you think it's within a unit, some guys that are on the ground. You don't typically believe that it's going to be somebody, right there in your own backyard. Unbelievable. But anyway, that's what's happening in Russia. Plus, let me see, there's a bunch of stuff I want to get to. I don't know if I'll have time to get to everything tonight, but there is a story I wanted to get to, let's see, on immigration and how it relates to high-speed chases, which are leading to even more deaths in Texas. And Human Rights Watch, the watchdog organization, they found that Operation Lone Star, which is the apprehension of these guys once they're in the interior of Texas, they're saying that it's led to the deaths of 74 people. And I don't think their intentions to kill people. Seems like another, story by NBC News to just propagate the idea that leave the open borders open and stop chasing these people. Have your cops stop doing their jobs, abolish ICE, and all that type of crazy. So if we have time, we'll touch on that. I also wanted to go into the story I mentioned earlier about the potential genetic information of Americans being made vulnerable to China through a company from the Middle East that's doing AI work, and the CIA's leery of it. So if the CIA's scared of it, I don't know. Maybe we should like it. I don't know. We'll figure that out in a minute. But I want to get to that. Plus, there's a couple of crazy stories about what a hospital security guard did in Arizona. Oh, man, this is nuts. And this one Ohio lawyer, oh, boy. We're going to get to those straight ahead as well. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. It's Open Phone America. I'm Rich Valdez.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. Amigos, Rich Valdez here with you straight till 1 a.m. And we have a bunch of calls that are on the board right now. Still want to cover a few things, but we've got calls from Indiana, San Jose, California, Chicago, Illinois, Evergreen, Montana. Let's go to Sarah, Bedford, Indiana, WBIW. Go right ahead, Sarah. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Well, real quick, you had a brother who passed away who was in the military. Is that correct?
Yeah, Robert Valdez, United States Marine Corps. He died on November 8th.
Well, I'm going to tell you, he's probably up in heaven looking down at you with pride because you are fighting a very important battle, and just like he was a fighter and willing to fight on the side of good, you are fighting for this country on a spiritual plane. We have a lot of ills being done by people because they subscribe to a bad ideology or philosophy, and you're doing your best to combat that ideology and the wickedness that accompanies it. So I think he sees you as a fellow soldier, because you really are.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. That's kind of you. I appreciate that and the kind words you said about my brother. I do agree that there's a spiritual battle going on, and I don't think it's new. I think it's since I've been alive, there's been a spiritual battle going on, and I try not to over-spiritualize things in our conversations about the news and whatnot, but I think ultimately there's always a spiritual component to everything, and there's also practical components and political components, and those are the things that we have to kind of watch out for. And appeal to whoever will listen to try and make things better and to make things right. What are your thoughts about what's going on in Chicago with the mayor saying this is the fault of right-wing extremists, the crime and the deaths that they're experiencing? What do you think about that?
Well, that's absolutely ludicrous, and the fact that they can lie like that when we all know it's gang warfare has nothing to do with right-wing extremists of any color. I don't think a right-wing extremist of any background would survive in half those neighborhoods, even to pass out placards, let alone commit acts of terror. But the fact that they can lie about this and are so brazen about it should be worrisome, because in a tyranny, these people know they're beyond the reach of the voter, really. And that's what we're seeing, a system where these people realize they're really not beholden to the people. They're above them, and they're ruling them, and they can make up whatever ludicrous lie they want. And they don't fear exposure because it'll have no repercussions. I really do think right. A lot of these elections are rigged.
I 100%. Not just the elections being rigged, but these people being out of their minds. I just think you've got to be out of your mind to be to give a speech in Chicago and say that it's right-wing extremists that are responsible for the crime and the death and the chaos that's going on. It's bizarre, and it's beyond me, for sure. Sarah, thanks for the call. Let's go to Diane, who's calling from Chicago, WGN Country. Diane, go right ahead.
All right. I had two things to say now in agreeing with what Sarah was saying. And here in Chicago, I've been here many years. And we're so overwhelmed with this migrant situation. And when you read about a police report, and there's a local paper that gives police reports here and there every week, and there's now like mugshots of people who have been arrested. Now, this one young Venezuelan fellow was arrested 3 times, all kinds of shoplifting, and the police and then he gets let go, but he had 3 different names. So this is getting scary, because these people that come in that are criminally bent, they're just going to join the underworld. They're just going to do what they want when they want. In Macy's, I've talked to people who have said they'll come and case the joint a little and then walk out with sunglasses. And it's materialism and all of that. It's not like I'm saying every single one of them, but those women with the babies and all that are going to be all under the thumb of this big group mentality. Our liberty is individual. And when you look at Chicago or America, and if they like America, well, they like the material part of it, and they also like the beauty of it, right? And but everything good was built by people individually, whether it's the Wrigley Building, Tribune Tower. All of the things that were built up was over time by individuals. Liberty is individual. It's not a big group thing where you just go and say, give me things. But that's bizarre what the mayor said, what you just said, and that is. Then my other thing is Henry Kissinger just passed away, and Woodward and Bernstein have said that they would reveal the real deep throat when that person passes away. Well, my theory is it is Kissinger, even though that Mark Felt on his deathbed said he was, because Woodward and Bernstein have said that there were several deep throats, okay? So I think the main deep throat was Kissinger, and I think he kind of betrayed Nixon. And that's just my theory.
Interesting theory. Now, back to what you said about the Venezuelan migrants that are coming to Chicago to wreak havoc and have to pillage the community.
Not as
best as
plan,
you know,
but individually have been
right.
to do crimes.
Do any of these gentlemen that you're referring to identify as right-wing extremists?
I'm sorry, who you said how many of
All
them?
right. Thank you, Diane, for your call. We appreciate it. Looks like we got a little caught up there. Let us continue to Jacob calling from San Jose, California on KVTA. Jacob, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Yes, Rich, God bless the Marine, your family member.
Thank you.
And regarding Henry Kissinger's passing, I think it's very apropos of what's going on today in the Middle East, because Henry Kissinger back in 2012 said Israel will no longer exist in 10 years. That was 2022. That was his prophecy. So I believe Henry Kissinger is the prophet. He has some authenticity, and I believe he might be off by a year or two, but I think he's accurate.
Well, we'll revisit that in a couple of years. I mean, as far as I know it, Israel is still there. They're large and in charge right now. But we will see how much of a prophet Mr. Kissinger was. Jacob, I appreciate the call from San Jose, California, KVTA, California in the building. And we are going to continue with the rest of your calls and more straight ahead. Don't move a muscle.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Head of hair in live late night radio 6 years in a row. It's Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Alejandro Nicholas Mayorkas, in his inability to enforce the law, has engaged in a pattern of conduct that is incompatible with his duties as a civil officer of the United States. Alejandro Nicholas Mayorkas, in his failure to uphold the oath he took, has, by his actions, lost the trust of the citizens of the United States to faithfully execute the laws of the United States. Wherefore, Alejandro Nicholas Mayorkas thus warrants impeachment and trial, removal from office, and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States.
That's Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene reintroducing the privilege motion to impeach Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, and now forcing the leadership to bring the motion up for a vote sometime before the end of this week. The effort comes, obviously, just after she tried to do this, and the House voted to table that motion with 8 Republicans voting against it. And I'm curious to see what happens here. There's still a massive influx of illegal immigration. Fentanyl keeps pouring across the border. And the motion was shot down by those 8 Republicans, joining all of the Democrats in opposing the measure. And now we have the same plan of attack. The question is, will we have a different outcome? Now, according to the Washington Examiner, the 8 Republicans that voted with Democrats to protect Mayorkas' job and send the articles of impeachment back to the committee, they found out from their districts that they made the wrong move, is what Marjorie Taylor Greene said. She continued to say, the 8 Republicans that voted with Democrats claimed that they wanted it to follow proper House procedure and go through the committee. She says, but her articles of impeachment have been sitting in committee for over 6 months. And they've basically been sitting there collecting dust without being picked up by anyone. Greene says she hasn't spoken to those 8 Republicans who voted against her initial resolution, but she believes, based on phone calls that her office has received, that the lawmakers heard from their own constituents while they were home for Thanksgiving break, expressing frustration at their opposition of the bill, at the measure. So Greene also said that she was very frustrated at how Speaker Mike Johnson was not really supporting her efforts to impeach Mayorkas. since he's gotten into the position as Speaker. So we will see how that turns out. Let's go back to the phones. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And let's check in with our buddy Frank in Evergreen, Montana on KOFI. Frank, how are you, sir?
Fine. Rich, I wanted to talk about China's aluminum power that they have on the world economy. They've got...
Sure.
Aluminum is more costly to produce per bullion, per an ingot, than gold. But it takes a lot of money to produce that aluminum, and the only way to produce that enough power is through hydroelectric power from dams that are subsidized by the government or whatever. And China's got several hundred of these aluminum plants and several hundred hydroelectric dams. But if they really wanted to, have an economic war, they could set the price of an aluminum can at $5 or whatever and drive us nuts. But we couldn't do anything about it.
Well, Frank, I think you bring up a point. I think there were points in history where clearly it was more expensive to mine for aluminum than gold. I don't know that we're there anymore, but the point that you make with these machines and the hydroelectric power and whatnot, none of it is solar, right? None of it is wind turbines. None of it is the green stuff that the Chinese plan for net zero emissions would ever implement, which is why they canceled and bailed out of their net zero emissions plan. And we, the Americans, are still part of the plan that they made that they now say is unsustainable, right? We can't afford to stay part of the plan because we need fossil fuels. So I just think that the whole thing is pretty crazy. Now, I wanted to also ask you about what you just heard Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia discussing her call for the impeachment of Alejandro Mayorkas, the Homeland Security Secretary. Do you think that this impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas will gain some momentum?
I hope so, but I'd like to see them all impeached myself, every one of them.
I'm with you. Throw them all out. Excellent perspective on that one. I totally agree. Frank in Evergreen, Montana on KOFI. Folks, we're going to continue with the rest of your calls and our wrap-up straight ahead. Our phone number, 833-482-5337.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So recently we had John Tobacco on the program. He's the host from Newsmax TV that anchors the show Wise Guys. And as you may have recalled, Tobacco is an American of Italian descent that has a very thick Staten Island, New York accent. And his show is broadcast from Sparks Steakhouse. Now, you might remember that for making headlines back in the 80s when Paul Castellano was killed right outside of Sparks Steakhouse. Well, I'm going to be on that show this weekend. If you want to check it out on Newsmax Plus, make sure you check it out. But apart from the shameless plug, what I was really wanting to talk about here as a setup was how an aging Genovese mobster punched a New York City steakhouse owner for calling him a washed-up Italian, not because of any extortion plot. Listen to this. So this aging reputed gangster accused of socking a Manhattan steakhouse owner as part of an extortion plot didn't do it to collect on any gambling debt, but because the victim called him a washed-up Italian with no balls, quote, unquote. His lawyer claimed at the start of the trial earlier today. Anthony Romanello, 86 years old, an alleged capo in the Genovese crime family, was merely defending his honor after restaurateur Shakiri Bruno Semelage, I guess that would be Semeli, insulted him. And he said he punches like a girl anyway. I love that. He didn't punch Bruno to collect a gambling debt, McMahon said during his statements. Bruno told him that he was a washed-up Italian that had no balls and that he was nothing. He punched him. The 86-year-old guy sitting there said he punched him because Bruno insulted him to his face. Genovese soldier Christopher Celso is also on trial for 2 counts of extortion after allegedly being enlisted by a Queens bookie and a wannabe actor to collect an $86,000 gambling debt by 2 of Salamai's relatives. So there is a plot here. Very funny. It's a picture of the old-timer. Looks pretty tough. Taking the stand on Wednesday, Mr. Salamai described how Mr. Romanello paid him a visit at his since-shuttered Lincoln Square restaurant and flew into a rage after Mr. Salamai told him he was only willing to pay the part of the debt owed by his nephew and not his nephew's brother-in-law. Romanelli kept saying, "I'd like to punch you." He said, "You have no guts to punch me," Semeli recounted to the jury. He said a few seconds later, "He punched me." Prosecutors played the video of the right-handed jab that connected with Semeli's jaw for the jurors to see during the testimony. After getting slugged, Semeli told Romanello that there were security cameras in the establishment, prompting the alleged longtime mafioso to hightail it out of there with his crew. Salamai filed a police report that same night, but ended up retracting it within 24 hours because his brother had relayed a threatening message from Celso that it would be a bad idea to go through with the complaint if he testified. This gets better and better. And in a written statement with the NYPD, Mr. Salamai says that he had a few drinks with Romanello during the confrontation, that the two of them had been acquainted for 30 years. So it was a misunderstanding between me and him, I think. I didn't want to do that, Salamai wrote. But on the stand, Mr. Semeli said that the reaction was not true. I was afraid this mafia guy was going to hurt me, my nephew, he testified. And during the cross-examination from McMahon, jurors were asked to read a transcript of the voicemail left, and it was extremely vulgar, telling him to suck this and do that, mother effer. Wow, this old man's out of control. Anyway, folks, that's it for me tonight. Like always, take care. Hasta mañana, hasta la próxima, and God bless America. I'm Rich Valdez.